welcome to Power Living with Kimberly Langford. So as a nurse, coach, Reiki master, and entrepreneur, I've built my life and work around helping and empowering others to live their best, healthiest, and most authentically happy and powerful lives. I share and visit with experts on all aspects of wellness: physical, emotional, financial, career, business, health, relationships, environmental health, and more. So if you want to step into your best self, listen in every Saturday morning as we share new and old ideas to help set you up for the coming week as a fresh start for a better and better you. And I'm super excited. So Dave Kerrigan, he's, in my mind, Dave, you are a maverick in our industry. And actually, you were one of the first folks that I talked to when I first came to this side of the fence. As you know, I've been a nurse for a long time. And so coming to this side of the fence in May, what I noticed was there are a lot of folks just like you who I've nicknamed you all Mavericks. You're folks who are thinking outside the box. Y'all share similar characteristics, which I really find really refreshing. And I think it's people like you, these Mavericks of healthcare, who are really going to shape our industry. I guess save it. If I can use that phrase, because we can't keep doing what we're doing, and it's folks like you who are pushing boundaries. We were talking a little bit earlier about this whole concept that you've developed that's really collaborative and I think very fresh, and I'd love to have you share a little bit about what you've been up to and what you do that's so unique.
Sure, and thanks for having me, Kimberly. First, gotta love nurses. My mom is a nurse. She's one of the most caring people in the entire world. So thank you for that, because I'll tell you, if the world didn't have nurses, healthcare would be far more lost than it already is, I think.
I'll pay you later.
Second, the fact that you call me a maverick is interesting. I was kind of thinking if I should grab it. I've got a binder around here. There is an organization called Predictive Index. And you can take this assessment and it asks you a bunch of questions, and then based on it, it classifies you into a category of, are you an amplifier? I forget what the categories are. Are you a captain? Are you a, all of these different things. Mine was a maverick. And so the fact that you call me that, I'm like, oh, guilty as charged. So shout out there to my Predictive Index friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and frankly, when you realize you're a maverick, the world gets interesting. I had started this side business working with early stage companies while I had a corporate job. I got laid off very shortly after that, which kind of spun this whole journey of my business consulting company and then the software, the collaborative software tool that I'll talk about. But just by way of quick background, former benefit consultant, former carrier rep. I actually worked at a hospital and a home care. So I've done kind of the provider side of things. I've done the insurance side of things. I've done the brokerage side of things. I worked for the state of Massachusetts on their, the state-based exchange, the Health Connector, running the small group program for a couple of years. So I've done a lot of things and enjoyed a lot of it. But the area that I'm most passionate about is the innovation and healthcare and employee benefit space. And that led me to create Sante Nasc, which is a business consulting firm that works with benefit brokerage firms on innovation topics, as well as works with early stage companies on kind of growth strategy, go-to-market strategies. And then the software tool kind of spun out of that, because when you are working in this space, what ends up happening is the number of new solutions that are offered to employers and generally work through that benefits channel, benefit brokerage, benefit consultant channel. It's just really hard as a benefit consultant to keep up. There's a lot of new stuff coming, billions of dollars with a B being put into digital health and insurtech over the last couple of years, and that's billions each year. So that means a lot of new solutions, a lot of new offerings, all of which are trying to be mavericks, trying to save healthcare, as you're saying.
And you got to know all of them as a broker.
Exactly. And these benefit firms and all these benefit brokers and consultants are going, I'm doing my best, because they already do amazing work with the placement of insurance, negotiating rates, finding different funding arrangements, working through independent TPAs and creating their own networks, direct contracting, communications, data analytics, compliance, anything related to this. Oh, and by the way, every vendor out there that could benefit your client, you also need to know that.
Pitching to them all day long.
You got it. It's just impossible. They can't do it. Not to mention the fact that they've got, an approach to the market where they can be somewhat fragmented and siloed. So they don't all talk to one another and share the resources that they have found.
Right.
And then the flip side of that is if you're a vendor in this space, whether you're established or you're new to the space, good luck trying to get noticed. There's a lot out there and it's hard to kind of, amplify and raise that message. So Benefit Pitch was born out of that. And it is a tool that helps benefit professionals search for and find companies that are offering services in the space. And it started out focused on early stage companies, but the fact is any company that's offering services in the space is kind of fair game for creating a profile. So there's different fields for focus on HR, financial, employee benefits and health, all those sorts of different things.
So
And,
it's like a Yellow Pages of sorts, kind of, sort of.
in a way, I call it a vendor discovery and evaluation tool. So not an RFP tool, not heading down that path per se. I mean, the information gathered is in that space, but I'm not trying to become the tool that, is an RFP tool for everyone else. But yeah, it's, think of it as a resource that gathers information on things that maybe is being done in a bunch of different offices today in different ways. So it's, centralizing that intake and standardizing the evaluation.
Well, and you mentioned earlier, I mean, there is a lot of, secrecy out there and a little hoarding, information hoarding maybe. So I imagine that's, I think I remember it in one of the earlier chats that we had, you mentioned about how that was really difficult.
Yeah.
In terms of, some of those, maybe you could share a little bit about some of those hurdles that you've overcome to provide such a valuable resource for folks.
Yeah. It's interesting because, and it varies, benefit firms, I don't care how small or big you are, they essentially do very similar things. And the differentiation factor, it's sometimes razor thin. A lot of times, some benefit firms have a certain tool or certain service that does differentiate them a little bit. And does it help them win new business, tons of new business? I'd say maybe some, and maybe, when it's rolled out initially, but a couple of years later, they might lose business and that tool isn't as differentiated as it was 5 years before. And so you find that they can be not as, collaborative, when they're in a room with other, not their peers, not their coworkers, but other peers from competitive brokerage firms. And so they tend to play some of that close to the vest. As a matter of fact, one of the things that happened on this early version of Benefit Pitch is, the ability to rate a vendor based upon what you think. And it's a community version that everybody can see. And I had a benefit firm, more than one, but one in particular, Dave, we'll never use that. And I said, well, why not? This is good news. And he said, nope, wouldn't do it. And ultimately what it came down to is, let's just say that this benefit firm took a chance with a no-name vendor or somebody who's new to the space, and they actually struck gold. It's a really impressive vendor. They do great work. They can demonstrate outcomes. It reduces costs. The ROI is there. Whatever the value prop is, they deliver. And they're thinking, well, if we rolled it out with a bunch of groups for this firm and a bunch of our people rate it, and then our competitors are on your site and they see the rating, they might not know it's us that rated them, but all of a sudden they're like, who's this vendor? And then they research them, learn about them, engage them, and then start rolling them out for their clients. I said, this is good. These are good solutions that help the whole industry rise. And they're like, yeah, I don't need to help my competitor to do that. And I'm going, all right. I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do get it. They play it close to the vest. They don't want to announce if they found a really cool tool that, hey, competitors, look what we do. You should use them too, because that might help them win an RFP. It might help them stand out in the crowd. And it is not their duty or their responsibility to announce it from the rooftops that they've found this great, tool or weapon or service or whatever the case might be. So yeah, there's definitely a caginess that occurs. And, the way I look at it is the innovation side of things, it helps everybody, right? And yeah, well, maybe.
But you have to be somewhat brave, right? It was interesting. I was listening to Robin Sharma, is one of my favorite thought leaders out there, and I love working with him. And he was talking to it was a podcast I was listening to this morning from Keith Ferrazzi. I've never heard of this guy before, but yeah, I guess he's got a book out, and it's on my to-do list to add that to me. But he was talking about that same concept, and I think sometimes we're afraid of competition. It's easier sometimes for the mediocre mind, I'll just say, to say, shh, don't work so hard. You keep your production down, right? To your, maybe to even a coworker, hey, don't work so hard. You're making me look bad. Not, oh, I better pick up my game. Heaven forbid, I have some competition that's going to make me increase my production. Don't want to do that. I mean, that's just the thought that popped into my head.
You're not wrong. I mean, years ago, I was a runner. I was a high school and collegiate sprinter, actually. And I remembered when I was in high school, we were doing a workout, and it's a short track, indoor track. And it was a longer workout, meaning it wasn't just a sprint, it was a distance sort of thing. And I was lapping some of my teammates in this thing. And somebody said to my brother who was on the team, what's your brother doing? He's making us look bad. And my brother's going, this is why he's the captain. This is why he's, competing in these other competitions at the top and all this other stuff. And I was not some amazing sprinter, but I mean, I worked hard because that's what you do in anything, right? Whether it's high school, collegiate sports, business, parenting,
regardless,
friendship, all these things.
Peers are doing, right? It's like that racehorse who's got his blind.
Well, you know what it is? I get it, because some folks are built in a way that they welcome competition. They welcome the ability for all of us, that rising tide raising all ships in the harbor. If I got really used to the waters at the height they're at and the wavelength, everything's just comfortable. I don't want change. I don't need to see the waves go up. I don't need to see more boats in my harbor. People are creatures of habit, and they may not want or welcome this sort of thing. And yet, inevitably, whether they want it or not, it happens. They don't want to contribute to the acceleration of it. It's just, it is what it is. Yep. I would call them the non-Mavericks, the ones who are not looking to change things, right?
And that's where the Maverick has to be brave. There's bravery in being a Maverick that says, I don't care if you don't like me because I'm trying my best. Yeah. I'm not doing it to out you. I'm doing it to out me.
Yeah, no, I remembered when I graduated from college, it was actually before I graduated, I was in a course that was talking about, it was an ethics course, I think, and it was talking about these really challenging situations, at least I felt like at the time, where, whatever age I was, 20, 21 years old, 22, and they were talking about how if you witnessed this in your company, what would you do? How would you approach it? And I remembered thinking, oh my God, I'd be lucky to have a job. What would I actually say? Oh my God, the president of the company or someone really higher up. And I remember thinking, geez, if I were ever put in that situation, would I be brave? And I remembered the professor asked me about it, and he just smiled and said, I have no doubt, Dave, you'll be fine. And lo and behold, I find myself to be one of the guys who maybe, to my own detriment, speaks out more than maybe I should, or more than some would, to, as you're saying, out myself, not necessarily out anyone else, but the whole point is you're trying to make sure that the company, the organization, the mission is all front and center here. And if we're not doing what we should be doing, then we should have a discussion about it. And
if you can't, if you're in an organization where you can't, because there are organizations where just shut up, then it's time to
sure.
the organization.
And if you were to look at my LinkedIn profile and see some of the stints that I've had, the joke is this. I have been working on Sante Nasc, my business consulting company. It'll be 4 years this January. And it is the longest job I've ever had. Mm. And so people say 4 years is a long time. And I'm like, I was always good at the jobs that I did. I think that my bosses and people I work with would hire me back in most cases. Yet I would move on after 2, 3, years. It just, I got bored, or I wasn't challenged, or I didn't get what I wanted out of it, or I was seeing things that I did, wanted to change but couldn't because I wasn't in a position to do it. And rather than spend the next 5 to 10 years moving up the ranks and then changing, I changed. I went on to something different.
Or you get to a place where you feel like, am I the smartest person in the room? And if so, you need to pick a new room.
I definitely never got to that level. I mean, surrounding yourself with amazing people is just something everybody should do. And and yes, I've heard the expression, if you're ever the smartest person in the room, find the new room. I don't think I've ever felt that I was the smartest person in the room, which I think is a good thing. I find that if you can learn from everybody else, you're only adding more to your toolkit, and that's both good and bad. I've had coworkers tell me all of the things about me that they change, and in a respectful way usually. And it makes you more self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you can change them is a different story. Whether you want to change them is a different story. But I do think that if you're aware of it, cognitive of it, it does make you approach situations differently. And so I might not change who I am, but I will be more cognizant of how this might affect others. And therefore, if I tend to be the one with the idea and run forward, I might pause and say, who else has an idea or a thought they want to add?
Yeah.
And try to zip my own mouth, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And breathe that spirit of cooperation. Well, the real question is, what does your wife and family say?
Oh, that's always the case. My wife, I work from home. I have before COVID, I was working from home in this little home office of mine. She is upstairs at the moment. She will not be coming down and making a cameo for, for fear of what she might say. No, I grew up from, I come from a big family. I grew up in a family that has, there's 10 of us before my dad passed away, 9 now. And I have 7 brothers and sisters. And I actually had a former colleague, former, supervisor, boss of mine who I thought the world of. And she and I were in a negotiation with an insurance carrier, big insurance carrier. And in a way, if you're talking sheer negotiation and leverage, we had an upper hand that we could have just driven forward and gotten what we needed. Relationship be damned, you know what I mean? And I took my time and I worked and I finessed and and I remember her saying, why are you doing this? It was a series of meetings and conversations and email swaps and stuff. And she just kind of was like, just get to the point, just deliver it and get it, and I was like, I was always one of those, you can tell me, you can't tell me to do my job and then tell me how to do it. If you want to have me do my job, I'm going to do it my way. And if you don't like my way, by all means, please step in and do it, because too many people driving the car are never a fan of that. And I just kind of gently said, do you trust me? And she said, of course I do. I said, then sit tight, let me do my thing. And I got it done. Longer timeline than I think she would have liked. And I think she was like, Dave, you can grow more, you can be more bold, you can be, and I was thinking to myself the whole time, I know what I'm doing. Later on, a bunch of us in the team had gone out to dinner. And when we shared information about ourselves, I said that I've got 7 brothers and sisters. And she went, oh my God, it makes so much more sense now. In a family of that many people, you can't just bowl people over. You need to, and frankly, this is a life lesson, I think, and I think I learned it pretty well. You learn to collaborate, you learn to negotiate, you learn to value the relationship.
Yes.
Because guess what? They're my brothers and sisters. They're not going anywhere. Like, they're going to be my brothers and sisters for the rest of my life. And if I bowl them over at some point, they're going to remember it. And it's not going to do well overall for our siblingship and everything else.
Yeah.
And so she said, I now understand. I said, this is not a demonstrative negotiation. We are going to see each other again. We are going to work together again. When this contract is up, we're going to do another negotiation. If I bowl them over now, they will remember that, assuming it's the same person. And by the way, health plans tend to have a lot of longevity. The people there stay there. Mm-hmm. And let's do this the right way.
Yeah. You bring up a really good important, because, when you think about that quality that a lot of you Mavericks have, that innovation and collaboration, they'll very strong base in relationships, and that competitive spirit, heart, you balance that with persistency in relationships, and especially considering what you're doing with your platform and with your business. It leads me to the question, in terms of in our industry where I'm really feeling we're at this revolutionary period where, you're going to have some companies that are going to come out on top. They're companies and folks who are doing the right things for the right reasons. You're going to know their names 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Folks who aren't, you're not going to remember them. They may make a profit for a little while, but they're not going to be here in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And when you think about all those qualities that we talked about and couple that with persistency, what would you say in your professional opinion, what do you think will be the factors that will really make or break? That's a loaded question, I realize, but make or break our industry, our healthcare. We know we can't keep doing the things the way that we've always done them, right? So in your honest opinion, what do you think?
How much longer do we have? No, I kid. It is a loaded question. And frankly, as much of an optimist as I am, there's a pragmatic side to me that when it comes to a question like this, the answer, I won't say you might not like it, but it's going to be an honest answer. When I was in college, my undergrad degree was healthcare administration. And I remembered one of the first classes freshman year that I was in, the class was called Healthcare Foundations. Professor Craig Higgins, a great guy. And he talked about the growth, the GDP of healthcare in the United States. And I don't remember what it was then. I know generally what it is now, but I remember it was this huge number back then and it's not sustainable. And I think it was around 8 or 10 or 12. What is it now? 18, 20, 22. I mean, it's how many years later? And listen, I'm in my mid 40s, graduated college in 97. It hasn't changed, Kimberly. And I say that almost angry because it should have, and it hasn't. When Haven came out a couple of years back now, the Amazon's entry into healthcare, I did a blog post that talked about like the top things that I would be watching for. And, one of the questions was leadership. Who were they choosing? And the reason, and not only that, but are they empowering them? Because if you are in the healthcare industry and you are chosen to lead an innovative healthcare company, there is this not invented here challenge that occurs, which is I know healthcare and I'm going to draw on what I know. But if what you know is the problem, or at least partly the problem, where's the innovation? Where is the new thought leadership coming from? Where are the changes coming from? So that not invented here is we didn't invent it here. Bring somebody from the outside. Bring somebody who's looking at this from a new lens. And I'm not saying that hasn't happened either, because it has. Mm-hmm. And what you end up finding, and again, the blog post was a separate blog post was it's not innovation that's the problem, it's the system. And the system is in quotes. The system is designed to sustain itself, right? And it's a living, breathing thing in some ways, and living, breathing things survive. And that means that, unnaturally inflated pricing as part of a network of a giant carrier is not going to change overnight. They've got a stock price and stock shareholders and all these other things, and lobbying groups and a boatload of money. Mm-hmm. That is hard to change. So as much as there's a lot of innovators coming, doing direct contracting and direct primary care and different methods and modalities, until there's something that really threatens the system and those in leadership and power, it's going to be incremental change. Now, the question that I pose back, and I don't know the answer to, is will the incremental change be enough? Meaning the change over time, the slower pace change, that longer negotiation.
Well, it's easier to swallow.
Will it work, or do you actually need something to really break hard? When folks talk about single payer or all of these other things, I'm not thinking that we need to go that route, but in some ways, you want to force change, guess what? You'll see something.
There's always going to be carnage in the wake.
Oh, tons.
Yeah.
And whether or not, the pain of change versus the pain of staying the same. Have you heard that term before? Because that's, I think, what it comes down to. If folks say it's not sustainable, they said it 20 years ago, 25 years ago, how much has changed? Yes, there's been some good change. Yes, there's been steps taken. Will it be another 25 and we'll see incremental? Will it be 5 and we'll see something dramatic? We'll find out.
Well, it's to be continued, I suppose. But in our own lanes, in our own ways, in our day-to-day activities, we can do work that's with integrity and with good intent and all those qualities that we
Always.
all want, right? And in our own
Mm-hmm.
way. And at the end of our lives, we can we can rest easy, right? Or at the end of the day, we can sleep well.
There you go.
Do our part. And so you don't have the answer for me, Dave.
You know, the entrepreneurial side of me says, even if I did, I wouldn't give it to you, because then, well,
There's a fee. There's a fee.
I kid. No, listen, if we could solve this together, we both could retire at the end today. But the fact is, this is a much bigger problem than the two of us. And what I try to do is focus on the innovation and those who can change it and help amplify their message and help be one of those, mavericks that can help shake this up a little bit. Even if it's just our little corner of the world and it's not shaking the system yet, maybe we take the steps needed to lay that foundation and get there in a future day.
Or pose the questions that need to be asked. Maybe they don't have an answer just yet, but we're percolating.
There you go.
Well, Dave, how do people find you if they want to know more about your consulting, Sante Nasc? I always wonder if I'm going to pronounce that right.
Oh, everyone pronounces it wrong, which is okay. This was a quick story on this. I was working at a large private exchange company, benefit consulting firm, on the leadership team, making a good salary, doing what I thought was everything I wanted to do. My dad, who'd been sick for years with Parkinson's, dementia, and other things, he passed away. And after he passed, I was just antsy. I was not feeling like, life was everything it needed to be. And so I was kicking around startup ideas and, this whole Maverick side of me that was getting, pulled out of me in my mid 40s. A lot of folks find this in their 20s. It took me a little longer. And long story short, I started Sante Nasc. Sante is a French term for health. Nasc is a Gaelic term. Yeah, Nasc is a Gaelic term for connect. So Sante, health, connect, Nasc. As a side business for the work I was already doing as a mentor and advisor for startup companies, accelerator programs. And I've done that for years and figured maybe I'd try to create a company out of it. And maybe down the line, it turns into something and I pivot out of corporate and into my own thing. I filed the paperwork on January 2nd, 2017, and I got laid off from my corporate day job on Friday the 13th, 2017. And if that wasn't a sign from up above or the universe trying to tell me something. So Sante Nasc, Dave at santenasc.com, SANTENASC is Sante Nasc, or Dave at benefitpitch.com, which is a little easier to remember.
It's interesting because there's a great lesson there, right? Don't procrastinate because you don't know what's coming.
To me, it's a journey because I don't know that I ever would have started my own thing back in my 20s or even in my 30s. And it took an event. So I think a lot of it is the journey and then pay attention to the messages. Because when this happened, listen, I've got 2 kids. They're in private school. You don't make a light decision to start a company because, you've now got, at my age, because you've got people who depend on you, right? And this was one of those decisions that wasn't made lightly, but my loving and supporting wife, God bless her, has been behind me every step of the way, 100%. And I could not have done this without her, because if she had said, no, don't go get another corporate job, we need the money because we have, the private school bills and all this other stuff. Listen, it ain't easy for sure, but here we are. And I tell you, I've never been more professionally satisfied and happy at what I'm doing. And she's as supportive as can be, and we're happy as can be.
Oh, that's awesome. So Sante Nasc, right? Better Sante Nasc or Benefit Pro or
Benefit Pitch.
Sorry, that's the magazine. Benefit
You got
Pitch.
it.
Yes. All right. Well, gosh, Dave, have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for sharing time. It's always a treat to get to chat with you.
Thank you for having me on here, Kimberly.
Ciao.